I can tell you, I flew in from Detroit, and as much as the airline companies are not struggling as much with their stock price, the airport was less than 20% of the planes that you normally see in the stalls. 1 out of 4 were in the stalls, and when you get on the plane, it's less than 50% full by restriction. So on the one flight, when I was coming, they were asking for people to bump to another flight, and I didn't have anyone sitting next to me. So they really kind of have a lot of space in between people. I like to talk about the ripple effect of what's going to be happening. And I just did an article recently talking about the cost of the CARES Act so far from an income tax standpoint. So first, some numbers, and I encourage you to stop me and ask questions as we're going through here. 20% of Americans, the top taxpayers, the top 20% are responsible for 87% of the federal income tax revenue. 87%. So the old adage, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Well, 20% of America does 87% of the federal income tax. The next 40% is responsible for the other 17%. And the bottom 40% either pays zero tax or they actually end up getting money back. Isn't that something? I did an article recently as well talking about comparing what's happening in our country to the little red hen, and how the little red hen found some wheat and she was going to plant it, and she asked the dog and the cat and the mouse, "Will you help me?" And they all said, "Not me, not me," until the bread was finished and they smelled the bread, and then all of a sudden everyone wanted to help. And the moral of the story is, when there's something to do, we all have to work together and we all have to help. And from then on, the cat and the dog and the mouse always helped the little red hen. And the reason I'm telling you that story is, in our country right now, everyone gets to vote. It's our privilege, right? It's our freedom. We get to vote. The challenge, though, is 100% of the people get to vote, 20% of the people are responsible for 87% of the tax burden. So what is the $6 trillion that we've already committed to add? What does that mean to you as an individual if you're in that 20%? So my family, we got $4,400 in the mail because we have 4 kids. And your fair share of the CARES Act, of the COVID relief fund so far, is $240,000 per household. $240,000 per household. $6 trillion divided by the top 20% that pays income taxes is $240,000 per household. Isn't that something? And who got to vote on that? So the problem with this, comparing the story to the little red hen, is the dog and the cat and the mouse realized, hey, we've all have to work together. But in our country, the way it's set up is we don't have to work together because we still get to eat the bread. 80% still gets to eat the bread and doesn't have to pay anything for it, doesn't have to do anything for it. And the top people don't even get it because they don't even qualify to get it. But it's the top people, the fact that you're here, you're probably in the top 20%. The top 20% goes pretty deep. The top 20% is the people that earn the most and pay the most taxes. But the reality of it is, fair share is not fair. When you go to Walmart and you buy some stuff and you pay 6% sales tax? 8? That's fair share. That's because everybody's paying the same. But if there's people that actually get tax credits and don't work, and the other thing, I was going to talk about this later, but the way we're at right now with the $6 trillion that we currently owe, people are laid off right now, getting an extra $600 per week.
Who's paying for it?
Who's borrowing the money for it, right? No one's paying for it because we don't have money to pay for it. We're borrowing money for it. When we say somebody's paying for something, there's no money to pay for it. We're borrowing money. We're borrowing money and borrowing money and borrowing money and borrowing money and borrowing money. So here's the situation. Minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. If you're working full-time making minimum wage, you're making less than $300 per week. If you're forced to be laid off, or if you choose to be laid off because of your COVID fear or a COVID situation, you stop making less than $300 per week. You make regular unemployment and an additional $600 per week. The cat, the dog, and the mouse. While the little red hen has to try to figure out how to work. And we didn't get to make that choice. And now people want to talk about, well, which side of government this, or I don't know, I'm sure that I'm going to vote for this, whatever. One side of government wants to give that extra $600 a week through January 31st of next year. The other side of government wants to just give them an extra $450 a week to go back to work. Lose or lose. And then, I don't know about you, but most people I know that, well, a lot of people, they spend what comes in. So if you take someone that's used to making $300 a week and now all of a sudden they're making $700 a week, and they've done that for the last 6 or 8 months, that's pretty disruptive to go back to making $300 a week. It's almost, you think, I can't afford to work because all this stuff I've been doing with my free time, like when you're retired, right? So we are in a real conundrum here. And the stock market is at all-time highs. The NASDAQ hit the all-time high yesterday. Isn't that something?
Not doing too well today.
Well, it bounces around every day.
Yeah, it
So that's another thing. How is it that the stock market's down 5.9% in one day, and doesn't even make the newspaper? That's a big deal, right? It's just we're so desensitized to what's happening because what? I don't need to worry about that. It seems to be okay. It's not okay. So I'm not saying that as a threat or anything like to put fear in you. You're in a spot right now where taxes are at historic lows. The stock market is at historic highs, and you have options. You have control. You have the ability to be able to minimize your income taxes. You have the ability to have a say in what it is that you're doing.